Hey everybody, welcome to my first live stream. I'm super excited about this. We got a lot to go over today, a lot to talk about. If you want to talk, send a little chat message to me. We can do this live. I'm writing into the chat right now. So I know that's kind of hard to see. I'll figure some of that stuff out later, but I got the chats showing up in the video there live. So today, I've been working on something really cool. I've been making a way to visualize some data, some geographical data. So what I want to do, what I have is this website, which I've created with Vite.js, React, TypeScript, and I'm visualizing all the conferences that the DX team at Nearform went to in 2023. This is kind of cool because I can zoom around on this map and I can click on places here. We can see in Italy there were 17 events, or I could look at Spain. Oh, if I click on these, sorry, I don't have the window highlighted yet. If I click on those, we can see in Spain I had, 5 events for the whole team, and I can see who went to which event. So it's just a little website that I've been working on to visualize this data that I want to present to my colleagues. You can see Brazil, we had 5 events. So you're supposed to be color coded. So it's just kind of it's a proof of concept showing some interesting things with using React simple maps to map out, to visualize this data that's geographically related. The data came from here. I have a spreadsheet here where I have all of our talks, who gave the talk, the date, what country the talk was given in, the name of the event, and the name of the talk, the name of the presentation or workshop. And the code just kind of matches that up. Here I can switch over to Visual Studio Code so we can see that. The code simply pulls in that CSV data that I downloaded from my Google Sheet and matches up the country in the map to the geographical name of the country to the event. So nothing really fancy happening, really a proof of concept to show how we can model some visual data. So what I really want to do though is the site works. I'd love to make another video about visualizing geographical data on how I created that design because this was a pretty cool experiment proof of concept here that I made. But what I really want to do is I want to deploy this to GitHub pages so that we can I can share this with folks and they can come and browse around and check out the data and do some stuff. So what do I have today when we're starting? All that I have is a GitHub repository where I've started creating this code. And it's not even a GitHub repository. I don't have a GitHub repository. I need to be really clear. All I have is a Git repository local that hasn't been pushed anywhere. I have a bunch of changes here that I'm ignoring for the moment. I haven't committed some changes I made to the package JSON. So I'm gonna go ahead and commit that. I renamed this from DX 2023 to DX events. So I'm just gonna change package name, go ahead and commit that. We can see we don't have a remote. There's no place to push this to. If I click on publish here, it's gonna say we need to sign into GitHub, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll do that later. First, I'm gonna go into GitHub. So the way this is gonna work, I'm gonna create a repo on GitHub where I can push this code. Then I'm going to set up GitHub pages and have some GitHub actions deploy the website anytime I commit to main. So let's do it. Let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and get into GitHub, and I want to create this in the Nearform open source project and group in GitHub. Organization, that's the word I'm looking for. So the GitHub OSS organization in GitHub. Now, in order to do that, I already have admin access to this org, but you could do this in your own private GitHub account. It's not really that hard to create a repo in GitHub, so most people are going to do that. I'm just going to click on the new repository button here. And we'll say create a new repository. I'm not going to use any templates because I've kind of set up the code myself. And I'm going to call this DX events. I'm going to make it public because I make everything public. I'm a big open source believer, and that's what I want to do. DX events visualization tool. There's a good enough title. A little bit simple, but I can update that stuff later. I already have a README, I already have a git ignore. I would like to have a license, but I'll probably put a different license in there that I prefer at a later date. So for the moment, I'm going to not create any license. I'm just going to create a really empty repository. So click on create repository. And here we go. I have a repository with nothing in it. And I'm basically going to follow the commands here. I prefer the command line. I'm basically going to follow these commands as they're listed here directly in the terminal. So I'm going to copy the name of the repo here. Rather than just copying and pasting all this, I'm just going to copy this here because I'm pretty comfortable doing this in the terminal. I'm going to stop my development server and we'll go ahead and go git add remote origin and the name that I copied from. That I copied from here. I just clicked that copy button there, so I have the SSH credentials into the SSH address, I guess, to push to with Git. So that's all set up. I copied that already. And I'm going to switch back to VS Code. Sorry, too many windows open. And I'm going to go ahead and add that remote. So what this command does is saying the name of the remote is going to be origin. So if you're wondering, and those names are really relative, it's just an abstraction over, rather than having to remember this long address, I'll know that the origin of this repository is now this address. So go ahead and run that. Oh, git add remote origin not match any paths. So, I think I did that in the reverse order. It's git remote add origin, and I'm going to paste that in there. So switch those around. That always happens. Commands happen in the wrong way. So here we are. I made that. Now I want to push my branch. So I'm really going to be following these commands. My main branch is already called main. We can see that here. I'm already in main, so I don't need to run that command, but we'll go ahead and push this up. So git push -u. -u sets the default origin or the default remote branch. So I no longer have to, after I run this command, I can just do git push and it will always prefer main on the remote. And I'm just really doing exactly what we see here. Oh, I forgot to put origin in there. So git push origin main. So saying push to the origin, make sure I spelled that right. And the main branch, and set up main on the remote to be the default remote branch for this local branch. So go ahead and run that. Pushing that up there. Took a couple seconds because I do have a bit of data in here. There is at least one data file that's on the big side. I think it's like at least a megabyte large, the JSON file that renders out, that defines all the countries in the map. So that's set up. I'm going to go ahead and confirm that it's working here in GitHub just by refreshing this page, and we should see my code is there. Boom. Step one is done. Now I haven't actually set up the README, so this is really the default README that came out of Vite. I'll fix that later. Really what I want to do today is publish this with GitHub Actions to publish this with GitHub Actions to oh, sorry, I just forgot to click on something there, to GitHub Pages. Stumbling a little bit over my own words, but that's the way that it goes. So now I'm going to click on settings in my repository, and I haven't done this in a while, so we're just going to kind of push through this together. I think somewhere here on the left, yeah, here it is. There's a pages navigation tab here on the left. Click on that. And I want to build and deploy. So I'm going to deploy from a branch. Best using frameworks. Yeah, actually, I'm going to use GitHub Actions to deploy. So I'm not going to deploy from a branch. I'm going to go ahead and use GitHub Actions, which will make this a little bit easier. Deploy static files in a repository without a build. Package a Jekyll site with GitHub Pages dependencies pre-installed. So I'm going to go ahead and do static HTML. I think that's the way to go. And I can add the build steps into those GitHub Actions myself. So I'm going to go ahead and click on configure here. And here it is. We have a GitHub workflow that they generated for us. They're calling it static. It's probably not the name that I would use. So maybe I'll go ahead and rename that now since I can. I want to call this build and deploy. Why not, right? Sometimes I'll call this like CI/CD or something similar. Honestly, I prefer to work in Visual Studio rather than through the web browser here. So I'm gonna go ahead and commit this in there. It's gonna try to build and deploy it, but I assume it's gonna fail because there is no like real HTML root. So we'll go ahead and commit that, and I'll pull those changes down and make them directly in Visual Studio Code because I'll just feel more comfortable editing it there. So commit those. Create, build, and deploy YAML workflow. We'll call that. Commit directly to the main branch. Normally shouldn't commit to the main branch, but I'm doing it now because, well, it's my repo and it's new. So I can do that. I'm just going to make sure that I have my notifications turned off here in case I get interrupted. So that's done. Now I'm going to switch back to Visual Studio Code. Go ahead and pull down those latest changes. So git pull. I could have clicked the synchronize button here, but you know, I felt like I didn't really need to. So I'm gonna pop over here. Now I have this new directory called GitHub workflows. And here it is, it's a YAML file. So it's nicely formatted in GitHub. So I can start, you know, customizing this the way that I want to. So we can see it's going to run on any pushes to the main branch. Workflow dispatch, yeah, I don't really care about this. Permissions, so the GitHub token, he can read, to pages can write. So I'm not going to change any of those things. We'll leave them all the default. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit smaller so we have a little bit more room to work. Concurrency, group pages, cancel in progress, false. I might actually change that to true because there's no point in queuing up previous builds, right? So do not cancel in progress runs as we want to allow these production deployments to complete. Well, I know I'm not going to fool with that for the moment because that's like kind of a more advanced topic if we want to cancel, you know, currently running builds, but I may do that later. And here we can see we're setting up some stuff for the deployment. That all looks great. Check out, set up pages, configure pages, So here's where I need to go ahead and start inserting the code that I'm going to do to actually build my environment. So first thing I'm going to do is set up Node.js. So set up a node, and that's going to have a command, but you know what? Honestly, I don't even remember what the name of that is. So let's just go ahead and figure out what that is. This is how I do this every time. I'll either look in a repo that I already have, that already exists, or I'll, you know, Google it. So let's do it. Let's go GitHub actions setup node, and this will take me to the setup node action, which is exactly what I want. We can see how they do that. So we use uses setup node v4. Sounds good to me. So switch back over here. So you know what? I don't need to have a name on there. So setup node v4. I will set up some caching probably, but maybe we'll do that a bit later. So which node version? I have to remember which version I'm using here. I'm using 20.11.0, which is the LTS. So I'll probably just put node version 20 in here and let it build, you know, whatever they want. So I'll put maybe 20.x to say, you know, pull down whatever the latest 20 version is. So let's go ahead and drop that in here. Setup node with, and let's do, was it node version? And I'll go ahead and drop that in here. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I want to do 20.x. That's the version of node I want to use. I forgot, we have some caching stuff. Uses for the package manager for caching and default directory supports values. Yeah, we will set up caching because in previous experience that runs so much faster. So caching global package data, cache npm. I'm going to be using pnpm. So I'm just going to go down a little bit. Maybe it's the pnpm one that said set up. I don't remember. Oh, here we go. I can just change that. Support package manager, pnpm. So here I can say cache pnpm. So cache pnpm. right? I prefer pnpm. It just installs packages so much faster, works really well with having monorepos. I don't have a monorepo in this case, but I do really appreciate how fast it'll install packages, and I've just become accustomed to using pnpm. I appreciate everything that they do in the open source community. So I'm going to use pnpm, set up that cache. The next thing is actually to set up pnpm in my Node.js environment. So in my GitHub Actions, so let's go GitHub Actions, setup pnpm. And I think pnpm has their own action. They do, right? I'm in the pnpm org, and they have a setup action. So I'm just going to go ahead and scroll down and see an example of how to use that. Like this is, modern coding, right? Copy and paste coding. So I'm going to copy that. I'm not even going to read anymore because I've done this so many times. Like I know exactly what this will work. And if there's any problems, we'll debug them later. So drop that in here. All right, got some formatting issues. So PNP action setup with version 8. I think version 8 is the latest of PNPM today. I think that's what I'm using on my local machine. So sorry, I'm clicking around really fast. So it's 8x is the current version. I can check that down here. PNPM dash version. And I'm using an 8 version also. So I'll just put 8 in here. So that'll set up Node.js. That'll set up PNPM. The next step would be to run the build itself. So let's go ahead and say name build. And I forgot what do we have to run here? Say like console or setup. Let's just go down, scroll around a little bit here. Is it shell run? Yeah, sorry, it's been a while. Here we are. We haven't remember how these things work. So let's do a pnpm install, and again, our node setup should cache those packages for us. So the first time it builds, the cache, it'll probably take a little bit longer, but eventually those runs will happen faster. So I'm actually change that to install. And I want to copy and paste this step. Oh boy, I just clicked way too many times. Shouldn't click so fast, no, should I? So let's just drop that in there. Fix my formatting. There it is. And change this one to build. Now, you know what? This YAML file is getting a little bit harder to read with all the lines. So I'm going to go ahead and create some white space in here just to make this a little bit easier to work with. Here we go. There we go. So feeling a little bit better about this now. So in my build step, instead of doing pnpm install, I'm going to pnpm run build, which should build my website. I haven't done that locally, so I haven't actually even tested. I've been only running the development server, so maybe I should go ahead and see if this works. I see I have at least somebody chat with me. Let's go in the chat. So as you can see, now I have this pnpm run build. So I haven't run that locally. I've only run the development server. So I'm gonna actually make sure that I don't have any errors there. That'll save me some time when I actually push this up to GitHub. So pnpm run build, make sure this does actually build. I don't have any TypeScript errors. This will save me some time later. Yeah, it looks like TypeScript made it, and it looks like Vite built also. Like I said, I have at least one really large resource. It's this. It's getting included into JavaScript, but it's over 1 megabyte. The data that the map is using to render out. If we look back at here, the site that we're actually going to deploy, React Simple Maps, uses a JSON file to define all of the geographic boundaries. And so I tried to optimize that file a little bit. We actually had a conference in Singapore, and Singapore is a bit of a small country, but it's there. So I had to put in a really detailed map. Oh, I guess you can't see that because my image is over the screen there. I had to put in a really detailed map to actually have it render Singapore on here. So that data file is over a megabyte. So I'm going to ignore those warnings. Doesn't really matter. And this is, again, it's just a proof of concept website. So it's not that important, this warning here. So we can ignore that. So I did test the build that it works. So now I have pnpm run build. It's going to set up the GitHub pages. And now it's going to upload the artifacts. So I don't want it to upload the entire repository. I want it to upload the dist folder, the distribution folder. That's where Vite is going to build our website to. So instead of dot, let's just go ahead and change that to dist. So it should upload that entire folder and deploy to GitHub pages. So I don't think I'm going to change anything else in there. I just set up the steps to install Node.js, install pnpm, build or install my package. So download all the dependencies and then actually run the build and just tell the existing steps in my workflow where to pull those resources. You know, where's that website living once it's built, and that's there. So I think we can start committing these things. I'm gonna go ahead and just double check where I made changes. Yeah, I added some white space and added those steps in there that we just talked about. So I can make this window a little bit smaller again. Sorry, I should probably scroll a bit less when I'm streaming. So I'm gonna go ahead and build that. So configure, build and deploy GitHub workflow. It's good enough for me. This time I'll go ahead and just use the Visual Studio interface to push this up to GitHub. So waiting for that little spinner to finish. It's done. So I can check that here. Git status. I do have a bunch of files that I didn't commit, so that's normal. There's untracked files. I'm going to delete those later. And change is not staged for commit. So I did have a file that was deleted. So it looks like I have a little bit more work to clean up my directory a little bit, but we can see that I've done a good job of actually pushing those files up there. So I am going to actually commit that because I did delete that file on purpose. Clean up unused topo JSON file. And I can push that one up there. So I will have a little bit of a queue now running in GitHub Actions because I didn't set up the concurrency here, which would cancel any in-progress builds. And I probably will actually set that up because there's no point in waiting for the previous build to finish before starting the next one. In fact, I'll probably find that pretty frustrating and end up deleting that. So let's go back to our repo here and see what's happening. Is anything happening? We'll click on the Actions tab up here. You can see, I had 2 builds that failed. Well, at least it's building, right? Like there's a good sign, right? So let's see what happens. Just gonna click on some things here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and hop in there and check out the logs, see what I broke. Pretty normal environment URL. So set up Node.js. Run actions, found in cache, unable to locate executable file, pnpm. Please either verify either the file path exists or the file can be found within the directory specified by path environment variable. Also check the file mode. So maybe I need to install pnpm before I set up Node.js. It seems a little bit funny, but is that what they do? No, they set up Node and they set up pnpm. So what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? That feels a little bit awkward to me, but I know it's because of this cache strategy that is trying to run a pnpm command before pnpm's installed. So, let's just get rid of the cache for now. I think we're going to have a better day if I do that. So let me hop back over to the source here. I'm going to just disable the cache so we can, just make things work a little bit. Save that. Go ahead and commit that change here. Say debug CI, commit, and push that up to GitHub. See what happens. So hop back over to GitHub, and I should see that action spinning up here. I can click on that to kind of watch live as this builds. So I'm going to click here. Yep, nothing's happening yet. Setting up job. So I have to remember why I'm getting that error, but I'll wait for this to finish. So let's see if it builds. Looking good. pnpm install. Pretty darn fast. pnpm run build. Ooh, had some errors, looks like. Let's go and check out what's happening up here. Couldn't resolve. Oh boy. So again, I haven't committed all the files that I needed to. So that's the danger of having a bunch of uncommitted files in your repo there. And I'm pretty sure the one I want is the logo deep navy SG. So that's this one, right? Logo deep navy SVG. So let's add that. Add missing SVG to repo, commit, push that on up. We'll see how this goes. And I'm a little bit surprised by the fact that I couldn't enable the cache on setup node. So I'm waiting for at least one build to succeed. Oh yeah, you can see it's really working now. Install. It's pretty light install for the moment because I don't have a lot of dependencies in this package. So we can see the build was super fast. Setting up the pages, deploying artifacts. Hey, looks like it completed with success. Pretty excited about that. Set trigger, another run, deploy static content. Yeah, so looks like that should have worked. I don't actually remember the URL of my GitHub pages, so let's figure out what that is. There's no link on here, so let's hop back over to settings. I'll figure out what it is. I'm just going to check. Oh, here it is. Of course, they give you the link here, so I'm going to click on that, and something's broken. I think I know what it is. It's this root. In fact, because I'm building in, I'm deploying to an org in GitHub, so it's going to always put this path preset. But when I tested this locally, I was running with no base path. This path didn't exist. I was just going to slash. So I'm pretty darn sure if I click inspect, I'm going to see that there's a bunch of network requests that get a 500 error because it's trying to pull slash assets and the JS assets. So let's just verify that that's the case. Sure enough, we have some, sorry, I said 500 errors, but 404 errors. And we can see it's trying to pull out slash assets slash something else. So we can see that the DX events isn't being included in that path. And I know I'm not surprised by that. That's just because I'm deploying to an org rather than to a dedicated domain name. So let's go ahead and fix that. I know what I need to set something here in Vite to tell it to include that base path. I'm trying to remember what that's called here. So configure Vite. Maybe it's server options. Origin build options. It's going to be called base path or base. We'll find it. Shared options, public dir base. Here we go. So the base is set here. But I'd like to set that with an environment variable since it's only being set in public base path for more details. I'm going to see if I can set that environment variable because that's going to be a heck of a lot more convenient if that's set in by an environment variable. So we can run vite build -- base path. I think that's what we're going to do and update that GitHub workflow. Right, we can pull that out of other places. So I'm just going to include that into the workflow file. here. So when I build, pnpm run build, I'm going to add on here dash dash, what was it, base equals slash dx events and a trailing slash. So that should inform Vite that when it packages up, builds my assets for the website, to make sure all the URLs include that slash dx events in the base path. So that'll actually be included in those URLs. So let's go ahead, commit, push, and see if that works. Fix CI, base path, commit that, push that on up there. In the meantime, while that's building again, I'm going to see if I can figure out why the GitHub Actions setup node. I can't find pnpm. See, I'm sure I'm not the only person that's had this issue, right? Like, it's always best to go ahead and Google it, right, to figure out what's happening. So they switched to this. They're having the same error. PnPM should install before the setup node. So that's kind of what I thought. Refer to the documentation. I just need to switch the order of those events around. So I'll do that so I can re-enable that cache. So fixed base path has been deployed successfully. So that's looking good. Let's go ahead and test it out and see if things work a little. Hey, things are looking good. My fave icon actually rendered this time. I'm just gonna hop out of there so we can see the website's up, it's running, it's looking good. I can refresh that. I will say GitHub Pages isn't my favorite platform for deploying websites because they don't give you very fine control. I don't think they give you any control over the caching strategy for the assets. And I've used like Firebase hosting because that has a pretty generous free plan. That's a great place to deploy for free because we can set the caching strategy for our assets. So those JS files, all those things that are built into the asset directory, which we can look at here. When I build dist assets, all these things, they don't change. Like this file name will never change. If I rebuild this project, it's going to generate a new hash here. So these file names will change every time I rebuild this. So we could inform the browser that it should just cache this giant JavaScript file. Remember, it's like at least it's over 1 megabyte. We had a warning about it here. It's 1.7 kilobytes. Gzipped, it's 471. So 1.7 megabytes and 471 kilobytes gzipped. So if we were using a Firebase hosting or a more advanced hosting provider, we could say, you know what, cache everything permanently. Tell the browser to cache everything permanently in the assets folder, at least for a week or at least for a month. And it doesn't matter because this file, the HTML file that references those assets, this shouldn't be cached, right? Every time, or it shouldn't be cached for very long, no more than maybe an hour or a few minutes. And so that way, when the browser goes and pulls down the HTML file, if it's been rebuilt, these file names will change and it'll now download the new asset. But as long as that hasn't changed, it could use the one that was in cache from the first time. So maybe that's another video we could go in deeper to talk about the right way to deploy a single page application using cache strategies. But that's not the purpose of this. I just wanted to set this up automatically so that every time I make a commit, which we've already seen, every time I make a commit into this repository, it'll now re-trigger a build. So if I change some of the text in my application, we'll see it automatically rebuild and we can refresh the page to see what happens. So let's go ahead and do that just to see that it works. I'll go here to where my title is. I have DX events. Let me just drop in hello in here. Now we can see that currently it's just DX events 2023. So now if I commit this change, I'm in which file? What did I do? Make sure I save that. Looks like something's running slow. I just didn't find my file. There it is. Just need to click the refresh button. So I'm going to go ahead and commit that. Demonstrate automatic site deployments. So by making that change, making a commit, pushing that to GitHub is going to trigger that action because the action's set to run anytime there's a push to the main branch. And I'm committing directly to the main branch. That will trigger a new action here, which we can see running. When that action's done, we can then refresh the page here and we should see that change. So this is such a cool way to work. Normally you probably work in a branch, and then when you're ready for those changes to go live, you'd merge that branch into main. Here as just a proof of concept. So, I'm just committing directly into main, but every time I make a change and I push that to GitHub, it's going automatically going to deploy that to my website. So just waiting for this to finish, which is probably done. But you know what? I'm going to activate that cache. So this will be even faster. Okay, that's done. It says it's deployed. So I should be able to refresh this page. Aha. And we can see the change just happened. So seeing magic happen. So this is such a cool way to work. So I could be off somewhere. You know what? I have a spelling error or there's a layout problem, and I can make that change and just push that up to GitHub, and it's going to automatically get deployed. But with great power comes great danger too, right? Like you should be careful about deploying things live like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and undo that change. So I don't want that to be permanent. Remove debug code. Go ahead and commit that. Now let's work on fixing the caching issue with pnpm. So hop back over to here. And let's see, I think all I need to do is move pnpm before I set up nodes. I'm going to re-enable the cache here. Sorry, I'll make this a little bit bigger so we can see. There we go. So I re-enabled the cache. Now when I cut this and put it after setting up, I don't know why this always gets reformatted when I copy and paste, but it doesn't matter too much. This one got moved around too. So I'm now going to set up pnpm before I set up node and the cache. And I think that's going to fix my caching problem. So go ahead and commit that also. Don't care about any of these files for the moment. So fix pnpm caching issue. I'm really curious. Like I saw how fast those installs were happening. So I don't really know if caching in this case is really going to save me a lot of time. But we'll see how long the builds are and we'll find out right away. So go ahead and push that up there. Off it goes. Hop back over here. Let's see that build happen. So we can see my builds are generally taking between 39, 49, 38 seconds, around 45 seconds, let's say. So let's go ahead and hop in here and see if that's working now. Yes, it's set up pnpm, set up node. So I think I did fix the problem just by setting up pnpm before setting up node. That's building. So what's going to happen now, though, is after it deploys, there's going to be a post setup node action that's going to upload all of my packages, my package cache, my pnpm package cache. It's going to upload those as an artifact. So the next time I build this, it can download the pnpm package cache, and when it runs the pnpm install, it'll use the cache rather than downloading them from the internet. And we'll see if that's any faster. So this run, right, it says 38 seconds, so it's kind of the same time as previous builds. Here it says 48, so sometimes those times are off in the logs, but here we can see the actual time, 48 seconds. So it didn't add anything that time, but maybe we'll get a performance improvement just by running that again. So let's see if we can run that workflow. If I click on here and say run workflow, why not? Workflow dispatch trigger. So here we just triggered a build manually rather than committing. So I just wanted to see what would happen. I think the other thing I should be a little bit careful in measuring these times is that it can also depend how long it takes to, set up the machine. Ask GitHub, give me a worker so I can build something. So here we can see job is waiting for the host runner to come online. So I should probably be a little bit careful about measuring these in this way, because it'll kind of depend on the the load that GitHub has. So if we look back through the logs, we can see that the action cache downloaded the pnpm cache, and then the setup node is going to unzip that. Those 34 megabytes. So that's a step that should have made the install step much faster. So let's just go ahead and see if we got any performance. It took longer. See, I sensed that build was so fast, but it may or may not have actually been longer because we saw that it took a long time to actually start the build. So let's get into a little bit more detail here. Here we can see that the deploy step took 38 seconds previously. Or here, let's look at remove debug code. There it took 35 seconds. And now let's look at this one that used the cache. It took 24 seconds. So while the total build time was longer, that had more to do with GitHub and the load and getting a worker secured, but it shaved off 24 seconds from a build. So this is pretty amazing though too, right? Because we're now building a website, a simple website, granted, in 24 seconds. So anytime I make a code change, I make the code change, I make a commit, and then I push it up to GitHub, and less than 30 seconds later, I'll say a minute because it took 57 seconds to spin up the worker, the web page is deployed. So I can refresh this to make sure it's still working, and sure enough, it is, and we got rid of that debug code. So this is pretty cool. You can see I went to some conferences in the United States in 2023. The Utah JS, this was pretty cool. I want to say I went to this developer week JavaScript conference. I think my data is a little bit out of date. I'll fix that later because I was in another conference here in February. So I need to go and check out my data and see why that didn't show up. We can see here in France, I had at least 2 conferences in France last year. So pretty excited about that. So there you have it. I just deployed a Vite.js single page application that's using React TypeScript and using pnpm to build. So this whole project, this whole website took me, less than a day to build. It was over a few hours, over 2 days. And now anytime we make a change, I can push it up there, and I can now share this URL with folks if they want to come and check this out. I'm going to present this to my coworkers at the end of the week. So, hey, thanks for watching the live stream. Super happy to have you here. Send me a message somewhere here. I'll drop my, I'll put into the description here. I'll be sure to put some links to my socials. Hit me up on LinkedIn or an X, and we can talk about any of these things. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer those questions. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. See you on the next time.